The universe is vast, mysterious, and awe-inspiring. Through science, we've uncovered black holes, quantum mechanics, and the very building blocks of life. We've built machines that explored distant planets, cracked the code of DNA, and even begun to map the origins of the cosmos itself. Yet, even as we push the boundaries of what's possible, one profound question remains unanswered. A question that transcends equations, experiments, and even time itself. Can science prove that God doesn't exist? This isn't just about belief or doubt. It's about how we make sense of the world. If science claims to explain everything, does that leave room for God? Or could the very existence of science, the beauty of its patterns, the elegance of its discoveries, suggest something beyond the material world? These questions touch the deepest parts of who we are. They challenge not only what we know, but why we seek to know. Can a universe that appears so rational, so ordered, really be an accident? And if it's not, what does that mean for us as individuals, as a species, and as a civilization? Today, we'll take a journey together through some of the greatest discoveries of science and philosophy. But before we dive deeper, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's quick, but it makes a huge difference in helping us bring conversations like this to more people. If you're intrigued by the big questions, hit the subscribe button and join the journey. So can science prove God doesn't exist? Or could it actually point us closer to Him? One of the most common misconceptions about science and religion is that they're locked in a battle, a zero-sum game where you must choose one and abandon the other. But is that really the case? John Lennox, a renowned mathematician and philosopher, has a striking analogy for this. Imagine someone arguing that you have to choose between Henry Ford and the principles of engineering to explain a motor car. It's an absurd dichotomy, isn't it? Henry Ford designed the car, and engineering explains how it works. Both truths coexist seamlessly. In the same way, asking whether we need God or science to explain the universe misses the point entirely. God is seen as the creator, the ultimate cause. Science, on the other hand, examines the mechanisms and laws that govern how the universe operates. This misunderstanding isn't new. For centuries, people have tried to separate science and faith as if they're incompatible. But history tells a different story. Many of history's greatest scientists, Isaac Newton, Johannes Kepler, and Galileo, saw no contradiction between their faith in God and their pursuit of scientific truth. For example, Newton didn't view his discoveries as a replacement for belief in God. Instead, they deepened his faith as he marveled at the intricate design of creation. Although the phrase "the language in which God wrote the universe" is more accurately attributed to Galileo, it reflects a perspective shared by these great minds. Science was not about removing God from the equation, but about uncovering the divine order and laws governing the universe. Einstein, though not a traditional theist, often expressed awe at the universe's order. He famously said, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." What he meant was this: the cosmos is not random or chaotic. Its patterns, laws, and symmetry suggest an underlying rationality, something that transcends mere chance. But what about today? What about the claim that science has made God unnecessary? Some argue that as science explains more about the universe, it shrinks the space where God can exist. After all, we no longer need myths to explain thunder or the movements of the stars. Doesn't this mean that God, as an explanation, is obsolete? This argument may seem convincing at first glance, but it misunderstands the scope of science. Science excels at answering how questions, how galaxies form, how life evolves, how atoms interact. But the why questions, the questions of purpose, meaning, and ultimate causation, remain beyond its reach. If you examine a painting scientifically, you can analyze its pigments, its canvas fibers, and even the chemical composition of the brushstrokes. But no amount of scientific analysis can tell you why the painting was created. For that, you need the artist. The same is true of the universe. Science can explore the mechanisms of how it operates, but it cannot explain why it exists in the first place. This brings us to one of the most astonishing discoveries in modern science: the fine-tuning of the universe. The constants of nature, like the strength of gravity, the charge of an electron, or the rate of cosmic expansion, are calibrated with mind-boggling precision. If any one of these constants were slightly different, life as we know it wouldn't exist. Stars wouldn't form, planets wouldn't hold together. Even basic chemical reactions would be impossible. Even atheistic scientists, like Stephen Hawking, have acknowledged the eerie balance of these numbers. Hawking once wrote, "The laws of science, as we know them at present, contain many fundamental numbers." The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. Does this fine-tuning prove the existence of God? Not directly. But it does raise profound questions. How do we explain this remarkable balance? Is it sheer chance, an inevitable outcome of some unknown principle, or does it suggest a purposeful designer? John Lennox often points out that the false dichotomy of God versus science distracts us from these deeper questions. He challenges the popular notion that science has somehow disproven God. Instead, he argues that science and faith are complementary. In his words, science tells us how the universe works, but faith tells us why it works. Together, they form a fuller picture of reality, one that satisfies both the intellect and the soul. For many people, one of the most challenging questions about existence is this: if God created the universe, then who created God? But turn that question around. If God didn't create the universe, how did it come to exist at all? Some argue that the universe simply created itself from nothing, a bold claim that raises even more questions than it answers. John Lennox calls this idea an oxymoron. After all, how can nothing create anything? By definition, nothing has no power, no potential, no existence. The 20th century brought us the Big Bang Theory, a revolutionary discovery that suggests the universe had a definite beginning. Before this, many scientists believed the universe was eternal, with no start or end. The idea of a cosmic beginning challenged that assumption and forced us to confront a deeper mystery. What could spark everything from nothing? Some scientists, like Stephen Hawking, proposed that the laws of physics, such as gravity, could create a universe spontaneously. Hawking famously said, "Because there is a law like gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing." But does this really make sense? Even if we accept Hawking's premise, gravity is not nothing. It's a physical law, an inherent feature of the universe itself. To invoke gravity as the creator of the universe assumes that gravity already exists. So we're back to the original question: where did it all come from? This is where thinkers like G.K. Chesterton add an important critique. Chesterton once quipped, "It is absurd to believe that the universe began by itself, in the sense that it began without a beginner." His wit underscores a deeper point. The idea of the universe creating itself is not only counterintuitive, but it also contradicts the very principles of causality on which science is built. Even more intriguing is the sheer precision required for the universe to sustain life. Take the concept of cosmic inflation, the rapid expansion of the universe immediately after the Big Bang. If this expansion had been slightly slower or faster, the universe would have either collapsed back on itself or flown apart too quickly for galaxies to form. Or consider the balance between matter and antimatter. The universe contains just enough matter to outweigh antimatter by a tiny fraction. If this balance were any different, the universe as we know it couldn't exist. These facts have led scientists to refer to the fine-tuning of the universe. The constants of nature, like the strength of gravity, the charge of an electron, or the rate of cosmic expansion, are calibrated with mind-boggling precision. How do we explain this extraordinary fine-tuning? Some say it's sheer chance. Others argue it points to a deliberate designer, a mind behind the cosmos. Of course, there are alternative theories. One popular idea is the multiverse theory, the notion that our universe is just one of countless others. If there are infinite universes, the argument goes, it's not surprising that at least one of them has the right conditions for life. But the multiverse raises its own questions. First, there's no direct evidence for it. It's a speculative hypothesis built on mathematical models rather than observations. Second, even if the multiverse exists, it doesn't eliminate the need for an ultimate cause. What created the multiverse? John Lennox often says that explaining the universe by invoking a multiverse is like explaining a library by saying it was caused by an infinite number of other libraries. It's a fascinating concept, but it doesn't bring us any closer to answering the fundamental question of existence. So where does this leave us? For many, the fine-tuning of the universe is a signpost pointing to something beyond chance, perhaps even a divine creator. Others see it as an unsolved mystery that pushes the boundaries of science. What's undeniable is that the question of why the universe exists cannot be answered by science alone. Science is powerful. It can reveal the mechanisms behind existence, but it stops short of explaining the ultimate purpose. In the end, the idea of nothing creating everything doesn't just challenge logic, it challenges imagination. Perhaps, as Chesterton suggested, the universe didn't begin itself because it was never meant to. Have you ever stopped to wonder why the universe makes sense? Why the laws of nature follow consistent patterns? Why mathematics, a language invented by humans, can so accurately describe the workings of the cosmos? Albert Einstein once remarked, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." For him, this was more than a scientific observation. It was a philosophical puzzle. Why does a seemingly random, chaotic explosion like the Big Bang produce a universe governed by order, symmetry, and logic? Science, after all, relies on the assumption that the universe is intelligible, that its laws can be discovered, understood, and trusted. Without this foundational belief, the entire scientific enterprise would collapse. But here's the question: why should the universe be intelligible at all? Historically, the belief in an orderly universe didn't arise from atheism. It was rooted in theistic traditions, particularly within Christianity. Thinkers like Isaac Newton and Johannes Kepler believed that the universe was rational because it was created by a rational mind, a divine lawgiver. Alfred North Whitehead, a philosopher and mathematician, observed that the development of science in the Western world was heavily influenced by this belief. He wrote, "Faith in the possibility of science is an unconscious derivative from medieval theology." In other words, the expectation that the universe operates according to laws wasn't a given. It was inspired by the belief in a creator who imbued the universe with structure and purpose. But in a world dominated by secularism, many have abandoned the idea of a divine mind. Instead, they argue that the universe's intelligibility is simply a happy accident, a byproduct of natural selection or chance. Yet this explanation raises more questions than it answers. Why should natural selection produce minds capable of understanding quantum physics or unraveling the mysteries of black holes? After all, human survival doesn't depend on comprehending the Big Bang or the fine structure constant. Alvin Plantinga, a philosopher, offers a fascinating critique of this idea. He argues that if atheism and evolution are true, then our cognitive faculties evolved solely for survival, not for discovering objective truth. In this scenario, why should we trust our minds to produce reliable conclusions about the universe? Plantinga's argument is unsettling. It suggests that atheism, far from being a foundation for reason, undermines the reliability of human cognition. If our minds are the result of blind evolutionary processes, then our confidence in science, logic, and even atheism itself becomes self-contradictory. On the other hand, theism provides a compelling alternative. If the universe is the product of a rational mind, then its intelligibility makes sense. Science works because the universe and our minds are both rooted in the same source, an intelligent divine creator. Consider the analogy of a book. A book is intelligible because it was written by an author. The sentences, paragraphs, and chapters follow a structure designed to convey meaning. Similarly, the universe appears to be written in the language of mathematics, a language that we as readers can understand. This is why many theists argue that the success of science is not an argument against God, it's an argument for Him. The very fact that the universe operates according to laws and that we have the capacity to discover those laws points to a deeper harmony between creation and consciousness. Of course, not everyone agrees with this conclusion. Some argue that the intelligibility of the universe can be explained purely in naturalistic terms. They claim that order emerges from chaos through self-organizing principles. But even this raises a profound question. Why should there be laws at all? Stephen Hawking once noted, even if we have a complete theory of everything, it would still only be a set of rules and equations. What is it that breathes fire into the equations and makes a universe for them to describe? Hawking's question highlights a critical gap in our understanding. Science can describe the rules of the game, but it can't explain why the game exists in the first place. The intelligibility of the universe is a mystery that transcends science. It invites us to look beyond equations and ask deeper questions about meaning and purpose. Is the universe rational because it is the product of a rational mind? Or is its order merely an illusion, an accidental artifact of a purposeless cosmos? For those who believe in God, the answer is clear. The universe is intelligible because it was designed to be understood. For others, the mystery remains unsolved. But either way, the fact that we can comprehend the universe at all is, in itself, a wonder, a testament to the profound connection between the mind of the observer and the cosmos observed. Science tells us how the universe works. It can explain the physics of a supernova, the chemistry of DNA, and the biology of evolution. But there's one realm it doesn't touch: morality. Where do concepts like good and evil, justice and equality come from? Many argue that science alone is enough to guide morality. But is it? Consider this. The natural world, as revealed by science, is indifferent to human values. Evolution, for instance, favors survival and reproduction, not kindness, honesty, or justice. So where do these ideals come from? For centuries, the Judeo-Christian tradition provided a moral framework for Western society. Concepts like human dignity, equality, and individual rights were rooted in the belief that all humans are created in the image of God. This belief laid the foundation for ethics, laws, and democracy. Even secular thinkers recognize this legacy. Jürgen Habermas, an atheist philosopher, has written extensively about how human rights and modern democracy owe their existence to Judeo-Christian principles. He argues that ideas like universal equality and inherent dignity are not self-evident. They emerged from theological convictions about the value of every human being. But what happens when we remove God from the equation? Can we sustain these values without their religious foundation? Some argue that we can build a secular morality, a set of ethics based on reason, empathy, and shared human experience. Yet this approach has its challenges. Without a transcendent basis for morality, how do we define what is truly good or just? After all, reason alone can be twisted to justify almost anything, from eugenics to authoritarianism. History is littered with examples of societies that abandon moral absolutes in favor of subjective, human-centered ethics with devastating consequences. John Lennox recounts a poignant conversation with a Russian scientist during the Soviet era. The scientist lamented how the state's rejection of God had stripped society of its moral compass. Without belief in a higher authority, the value of human life became negotiable, something to be determined by the state, not inherent or sacred. This conversation is a stark reminder that morality grounded solely in human reasoning can be fragile. When ethical principles are untethered from something greater than ourselves, they risk becoming tools of convenience rather than commitments of conviction. Christianity, on the other hand, offers a unique perspective on ethics. It doesn't merely provide a set of rules. It introduces a moral vision grounded in love, forgiveness, and self-sacrifice. At the heart of this vision is the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But Christianity goes even further. It challenges us not only to treat others with respect, but to love our enemies, to forgive those who wrong us, and to seek peace even in the face of injustice. This radical ethic has inspired countless movements for justice and human rights throughout history, from the abolition of slavery to civil rights struggles. Of course, secular ethics can also inspire acts of compassion and justice. But here's the question: can secular morality provide the same level of hope and accountability? Without belief in ultimate justice, how do we make sense of the suffering and injustice in the world? For many Christians, the promise of God's ultimate judgment provides not only hope, but also a moral anchor. It reassures them that evil will not go unanswered, and that every act of kindness, no matter how small, has eternal significance. Think of the story of a cake. You can analyze its ingredients, its texture, and even its chemical composition, but no amount of scientific analysis can tell you why it was made. For that, you need to know the baker. In the same way, analyzing the universe through science can reveal its mechanisms, but it can't explain its purpose. Christianity invites us to look beyond the physical ingredients of the world and discover its ultimate meaning, a relationship with the Creator. So, can science provide a foundation for morality? Perhaps it can explain the how of ethical behavior, why humans might cooperate or empathize for survival. But it struggles to answer the why. Why should we value every human life? Why should we pursue justice even when it's inconvenient? For Christians, the answer lies in the belief that morality is not a human invention, but a divine gift, a reflection of the Creator's character and purpose. Whether or not you agree, the connection between faith and ethics is undeniable. It's a reminder that the deepest questions of life cannot be separated from the question of God. As we've seen, science and faith tackle different questions, how things work versus why they exist. But Christianity makes a bold claim. It ties these questions together through one person, Jesus Christ. At the heart of the Christian faith is the resurrection of Jesus. For believers, it's not just a symbol of hope. It's the ultimate evidence that God exists, that He cares about humanity, and that there is life beyond this one. The resurrection is often misunderstood as a metaphor or myth, but Christianity insists it's a historical event. Scholars like Sir Norman Anderson, a legal expert, have studied the evidence and found it compelling. Anderson highlighted the reliability of the eyewitness accounts, the empty tomb, and the extraordinary transformation of Jesus' disciples, people who went from fear and despair to boldly proclaiming the resurrection, even at the cost of their lives. If the resurrection is true, it changes everything. It means that God is not distant or indifferent, but deeply involved in human history. It means that suffering, injustice, and even death do not have the final word. For millions of believers, this hope offers meaning in the face of despair. It's a promise that love and justice will ultimately prevail. It's a reminder that, despite the brokenness of the world, there is a story unfolding, a story where God invites humanity to play a role. As we conclude, consider this. What if the resurrection isn't just a religious claim, but a personal invitation? What if it's a call to see the world not only through the lens of science, but also through the eyes of faith? Maybe today's journey has stirred questions or awakened new thoughts. If so, don't ignore them. Be open to the possibility that God is reaching out to you, not with force, but with love. He invites you to discover not only the mechanisms of the universe, but its meaning, a meaning that includes you.